17. Upnapishtim. Urshanabi moored the boat to a pylon on the island and led the small party ashore. There was little to see but rocks, and no sign of anywhere that Upnapishtim could be living. The four of them moved through the volcanic debris across ground that was slightly rising. Finally, they reached the lip of a large depression. Urshanabi merely gestured downwards. Reaching the crest, Ace followed his gaze and stifled an exclamation. They were on the edge of a huge pit, almost a mile across. It was impossible to judge how deep it was because the entire depression was filled with what looked like a gossamer city. Minarets of light and air shimmered in front of them. Towers, pathways and ramps seemed to have been spun from magical materials. Long paths entwined along the jagged buildings, leading into the brighter depths. It was as if they were gazing into a fairy city, unreal and insubstantial. Gilgamesh swore, and even Avram muttered a protecting prayer. Both men halted behind Ace, reluctant to move further. "What is that place?" Ace managed to say. Urshanabi smiled. "That is no place. That is our ship." "Ship?" Gilgamesh echoed. "But where are the oars, the slaves, the sails? How can it move?" "Through the air, my impetuous friend," Urshanabi explained. "Through the voids between the stars." Then he grimaced. "When it's in good shape, that is. Right now there it is, and there it stays." He moved into the lead again. "Come, follow me." "Down there?" asked Gilgamesh warily. "Of course. How else will you meet Upnapishtim? He dwells within the ship." The ferryman looked up in amusement. "Don't tell me that Gilgamesh, king of men, is afraid." "Nobody calls Gilgamesh a coward," the king growled, reaching for his axe. "I am merely being cautious." Ace smacked his hand. "Then be cautious after me," she suggested, and began the descent behind Urshanabi. Scowling, Gilgamesh started after her, with Avram, still dazed, bringing up the rear. The going was slow, for all but Urshanabi were mesmerised by the flashing display of lights below. It was as if the city were a living creature, and the pastel colours some kind of blood flowing just below the skin. Ripples of lights played across the street, buildings and ground. It was weird, unearthly, and indescribably beautiful. It occurred to Ace that she was probably suffering more from culture shock than even Gilgamesh and Avram were. Both men had simply accepted that the whole matter was completely beyond them, and now nothing that they saw surprised them. To them, the craft was simply magic. Ace, on the other hand, had seen much in her travels with the Doctor. The wonders of Iceworld, the terrors of Paradise Towers, the evil of the Psychic Circus. But this was of a completely different order from anything she had yet witnessed. The sheer scale of the place was stunning. They entered through what was obviously an airlock, but instead of stepping into sterile metal corridors and the kind of spaceship that Ace had come to expect, they had walked into a wonderland. The outer skin of the ship was suffused with the glowing, writhing lights. Inside, the walls, floor and roof were all aglow with this dancing brightness, illuminating what lay within. Roads stretched through parks. Buildings punctured what was supposedly the interior sky. There was even the sound of running water, and she saw a stream flowing beside the road. The plants and trees were subtly different from anything she had ever encountered. Vast orchid-like plants grew next to spiny bushes. Something that seemed like a cross between moss and grass grew underfoot. Weird, exotically shaped trees wound about one another, reaching for the shifting artificial sky. She could see people moving in the buildings and on the walkways. "Incredible," she finally managed. "Wicked!" Urshanabi smiled offhandedly. "We quite like it. Anu looked a lot like this once." "Looked?" "We'd best get along to Upnapishtim," their guide said, evading the question. He gestured them to what seemed to be a large set of bathroom scales, with the readout on a rod at one end. "Climb aboard." Ace did as she was directed, stepping lightly onto the base. Both men, still silent, joined her, and Urshanabi took his place behind the stalk. His fingers flickered and Ace felt a slight, not unpleasant feeling about her ankles, holding her in place as the small vehicle rose into the air. "Magic indeed," Avram breathed, staring at the fields flashing below them. "Directed gravity fields," Urshanabi murmured. "Faster than walking and less tiring." "Yeah," agreed Ace, enjoying the sensation. "Better than a fun fair." They headed directly towards one of the larger buildings, zipping over the lower edifices and whipping between the taller ones. Just as it looked as if they would collide with a wall in front of them, it grew a hole which dilated, and they flashed inside, coming to an instant halt. There was no giddiness. The vehicle simply sank to the floor, and the tightness about their ankles ceased. "This way," their guide said, gesturing for them to follow as he left the room. It was like almost any office building Ace had ever been in. Not that she was a frequent visitor to such places. Soft carpeting covered floors, and the walls were of pastel hues, mostly blues and greens. There was no obvious source of lighting. It was as if the whole building gave off the soft glow that illuminated the place. Urshanabi stopped at a double door and placed his hand against a small plate set in the wall. After a short hum, the doors slid open, and he led them inside. Not knowing what to expect, Ace was vaguely disappointed to walk into an ordinary office. A large one, granted, but an office. It was some 40 feet across, and the whole of the far wall was a window looking out over the cityscape. Directly in front of this was a massive desk, some 10 feet wide and 4 deep. The surface was pure white, with nothing at all visible on it. Several chairs faced the desk. To one side was what looked like a white blackboard, and close by it was something that looked like the bar on Iceworld. Bottles of exotic designs and contents filled several shelves behind it. Several glasses lay ready on it, and Urshanabi moved over, indicating that the visitors approached the desk. He didn't have to suggest this. They were all drawn there by the man seated behind it. He was tall, and would have been almost 7 feet high if he had been standing. He wore a uniform similar to Urshanabi's, but crisp and clean. The whiteness of it was almost dazzling. His face was lined and etched with time and fatigue, but his golden eyes were bright and curious. His hair and beard were both short and pure white also. He looked like a colourless Santa Claus. "So," he offered in mild conversational tones, "you wish to see me? I am Upnapishtim." "Yeah," Ace agreed, holding out her hand. "I'm Ace. These are Avram, a singer, and Gilgamesh, the king of Uruk." Upnapishtim nodded politely to the men and ignored Ace's hand. She was unsure if he didn't understand her gesture or simply chose to ignore it. Embarrassed, she let her hand drop. Despite herself, she felt in awe of the man. He had an air of authority about him that even Gilgamesh seemed to sense. "Are you a god?" the king asked, staring about the room in wonder. "Is this heaven?" But Napishtim laughed good-naturedly. "No, I'm no god, and this is merely where I work. Far from heaven, and sometimes uncomfortably like hell, I fear." He looked at Avram. "I believe you were almost here once before. The Guardians reported a singer who talked with them a few weeks ago?" Avram swallowed and nodded nervously. "I told the Lady Aya about you," he stammered. "She and the Lord Ea were most interested, and she has come to seek your help." Urshanabi interrupted them, quietly handing out drinks from a silver tray. Ace took one politely and sipped it. It tasted like fruit juice of some sort, and was very welcome after the trek she had endured. Udnapishtim accepted a drink also, and smiled when he saw that Gilgamesh eyed his suspiciously. "A harmless blend of fruit extracts," he assured the king, sipping at his own glass to reassure Gilgamesh. "You looked in need of it. Now, why don't you take seats and explain your purpose in visiting me here?" He eyed Ace somewhat wryly. "You don't seem to be from this land, and I did not think that this civilization recognized women as the equals of men." "It doesn't," Ace answered. "I'm not from this country, or time." "Temporal travel?" asked Utnapishtim curiously. "Could it be? I've heard mention that such things are possible, though only—" He broke off. "Still, go on." "Well, the Doctor and I are sort of wanderers in space and time," Ace explained. "We landed here and discovered that there's a serious problem that we think you could help us with." "I'm not sure that we can or should help you at all," sighed Utnapishtim. Ace suddenly sensed trouble. "Do you mean that you're unwilling to help?" she asked. "Or unable?" "Both." He stood up and hesitated a moment. "Urshanabi, perhaps you would be kind enough to see to our two guests here." He gestured towards Gilgamesh and Avram. "I would speak with Ace privately." Urshanabi nodded. Of course. To the men he said, perhaps a little food would make you more comfortable. A feast? Gilgamesh asked, an eager gleam in his eye. With beer? And are there any women here? Lots, the ferryman answered, his eyes sparkling. Let the king try making passes at any of them, and he'd regret it. Then I may enjoy my stay. Gilgamesh stood up, eager to begin his explorations. Avram looked less certain, but Ace nodded in what she hoped was an encouraging manner. Urshanabi led them out of the room, and the door hissed shut. Utnapishtim gestured for Ace to join him at the window. For a moment, they both looked out at the buildings. My heritage and my problem, the old man explained. There are almost 17,000 of us in this city. The genetic banks hold the stored materials for almost 1 million more. He looked at her directly, and she could see real pain in his eyes. And this marvellous city ship of ours has power to sustain us for barely 6 more weeks. She looked at him, suddenly beginning to see what he meant. And then we must leave. Suddenly tired, he turned his haunted eyes onto her face. We must all leave this ship and look for a home here on Earth. He sighed and sank into his chair. And I do not like that. We are an ancient people and must adapt this planet to our needs. We will be forced to fight, I can see that. We are a technological race, and the native humans will never accept us as we are. There will be problems and conflicts. A chill shook Ace. You're talking about war. Yes, Ace. Now do you see why we cannot help these humans? Gods of Anu forgive us. We are going to have to steal their planet from them. Ace felt her confidence draining away, along with the blood from her face. War? She repeated blankly. I don't like the idea any more than you do, Utnapishtim answered. I am, after all, a civilized man. But I am no fool. He gestured out of the window at the cityscape again. I know that any attempt to move all of this out into the primitive world beyond our island will cause terrible problems. Yet I have no options. My duty to my own people is paramount. The heritage of Anu must survive, and if it must be here... He shrugged. Then so be it. He turned again to face her, and she could see the horror in his own eyes. I do not like what I do, but as the leader here I must make that decision, and then live with the consequences, for good or for ill. You don't understand, she finally managed to say. You can't do what you're talking about. Ace, he said sadly, I know how repugnant the idea is to you. But I have no other... It won't work, she told him desperately, hoping that her uncertainty would not show. I'm a time traveller, remember? Well, I won't be born for another 5,000 years or so, on this planet, to the human race, not your descendants. Ace's interpretation of temporal causality, however shaky, impressed Utnapishtim. Realising what she meant, he turned once again to stare out of the window. The Earth stays human, he said softly. Then what became of my people? I don't know, she replied. I've never even heard of Anu before, and though I've travelled about quite a bit, I don't recall ever hearing of your descendants. Sinking wearily into his chair, Utnapishtim propped his head on his right hand. Is this it? He asked, not really talking to her. After everything, we have survived for nothing. We will simply perish here? Feeling sorry for him, Ace tried to help. It's a big universe. You could be anywhere out there in my time, and I'd never know. What happened to bring you here? Tell me about it, she suggested. He would never offer to help the doctor while he was in this state. I know I don't look like much, but maybe I can help you. She ignored the thought, fat chance, that her subconscious sent her. She was also pushing back another uncomfortable thought. Maybe this was the crisis that would affect all future life on Earth. Maybe, in some split-off plane of reality, Utnapishtim and his people did take over the planet. It was a harrowing idea, but the doctor seemed to be certain that the danger they had to combat was Ishtar. Then again, the doctor had been wrong in the past. What if he was wrong this time? And so far there hadn't been a sign of anything that might be considered a Timewyrm. She fought this idea away and tried again with Utnapishtim. He looked about ready to break down, here and now. The strain on him must be terrific. Tell me, she asked again, What do you mean about the heritage of Anu? Why not? He ran a distracted hand through his short white hair and tried to collect himself. It will at least pass some time. He gestured for her to sit, and when she did so, he continued. This ship, this city we are in, represents all that is left of our home world, Anu. It lay many thousands of light years from here, Ace, and was once very beautiful indeed. This ark is all that we now have, and that for not much longer. Anu was probably not the paradise we all tend to think of it as. There were undoubtedly problems, many of them, but we were happy enough there. Our cities were much like this, pleasant green places where we could work and relax and be happy. Our sciences had progressed to a satisfactory level, and life was simple but elegant for all. Then came Kataka. He buried himself in his memories for a moment, lost in his own mind. Then, realising this, he straightened up and threw Ace a wan smile. Where she was from, no one is sure. She was probably just another person initially, but she had a terrible fear of dying, and would not accept that even with our lifespans of almost 1,000 years, death would come to us in the end. She had heard stories, probably, as we all have, of a race of beings calling themselves Time Lords who live forever. They're just tales told to amuse children all over space. No, they aren't, Ace said quietly. The bloke I travel with is one of them. His name's the Doctor. Utnapishtim raised an eyebrow. Forgive me. At any other time I would be excited by the thought of a mythical being turning out to be flesh and blood, but at this moment, he sighed again. Worries drive pleasures out very effectively, I'm afraid. Well, however she got the idea, Kataka decided that she would not die. She experimented with cybernetics, replacing parts of living flesh with mechanical analogues. Yeah, I know what cybernetics is. Ace could still recall the cold grip of the Cybermen she had faced quite recently. The end result of tissue replacement, they were grim, implacable, logical hell on two legs, and numbered along the Doctor's greatest foes. Well, she made breakthroughs. Oh, our people had toyed with cybernetics in the past, but abandoned the field. With our medical knowledge, we were able to regrow lost limbs, and to keep the body functioning pretty well up to the ultimate point of death. Puzzled, Ace asked, Then how come you have to die? Utnapishtim nodded. You make a good point. We could regrow most things, but the dividing line between most and all was in brain tissue. It inevitably degenerated beyond the stage where we could do anything. Our living minds simply wore out. You might say we die not of disease or accident, but simply through tiredness. Kataka would never accept this, despite our knowledge. Instead, she managed to come up with a way to stay alive. Instead of attempting to regrow her mental tissues, she simply replaced it periodically. How? Putting it crudely, she steals it from other living beings. Seeing Ace's look of revulsion, he nodded. Our thoughts exactly. When we discovered what she was doing, she was instantly condemned for her actions, and sentenced to the death she so feared. Would that it had been that simple to carry it out. He was lost in his memories again for a short while. Finally, he looked up. She had known, of course, that one day the authorities would discover what was happening, and she had planned for it. While she had worked on keeping her brain alive with these periodic implants, she had made another discovery that was, if anything, more terrible than her first. She had faced a problem with storage of her own memories. With the breakdown of the brain cells, data would inevitably be lost. The fresh cells would be wiped clean of the owner's thoughts and would be blank until she could imprint them. What she did then was to link her own living mind to a computer backup memory. It kept, if you like, a second set of everything she had on file, and she discovered that she could use this mind as if it were her own. She built little radio receivers that she could implant in the skulls of others, and then connect to this second mind of hers in the computer, which could then take over the infected person. She could see through their eyes, think through their brain, experience their bodies. After a moment, Ace prompted him. And then what? Oh, we were blind fools. We managed to isolate Kataka, and she was put to death, screaming and pleading for mercy. Mercy? She didn't even understand the word. Looking sick, he wiped his brow. But at the end, she stopped her begging and threatened us. While she was being put to death, she promised that she would have her revenge. I myself was the one appointed judicially to kill her, and as I did so I saw in her eyes that she was telling the truth. I knew that she really believed that she would have her revenge even after death, but I could convince few people of this. I was scared, Ace, terribly afraid. I believed her when she promised destruction, though I had no idea what she meant. So I had this ark built just in case. If she was somehow able to destroy Anu, then I would save what I could. We built it in space, orbiting our world, and I convinced my fellow leaders that it was an experimental colony. They thought I was foolhardy, but allowed me to stock it and to recruit followers. It's a good thing I did. We were almost finished when Kataka carried out her promise. You see, we had not known about the computer backup mine when she had been captured and executed. She, of course, made no mention of it. But this computer thing was her, down to every last detail, every final thought. And it hated us with a bitter depth of passion. Slowly, it had built up the linkages in the minds it controlled. Some it put to work to house a body for the mind. The rest it put to work building a lethal weapon, one banned from our world for generations without number. A cobalt device. I was supervising the stocking of this city ship when the news came to us. Kataka had emerged from her hiding place and struck back at our world. She, too, had a ship of sorts, populated by her slaves. Her computer personality went aboard it, and then detonated her cobalt bomb. It was several minutes before he could bring himself to speak. Even then there were tears in his eyes and a catch in his throat. We saw the surface of our lovely world burning, writhing in the fires of death. The elements themselves turned against it. Everyone still on the planet perished utterly. Anu was ravaged in moments, and left a smouldering, lifeless, charred ball in space. But Kataka had not known of my plans, as I had been ignorant of hers. She was as surprised by our existence as we were horrified to find her. Then she tried to attack us too. I had been warned just before the death of Anu by my companions on the council that Kataka still lived as a computer being. She had not been able to restrain herself from gloating to her victims before she triggered the bomb, and they had a few brief seconds in which to warn me before they perished. But it enabled me to be prepared. I created an electronic organism, a programmed disease that would eat at her mind and destroy it. A computer virus, Ace said. A computer virus. Yes, exactly. That's just what it was. I managed to use a signal carrier to implant it in her ship. It almost worked. If I had had more time to perfect it, perhaps she would have died then. Instead, it simply broke down her linkages with her mind slaves. Then she attacked us. We fought back. Our battle was one of manoeuvres into and out of hyperspace as we fought and dodged. Eventually, above this planet, we won. Kataka's ship broke apart under our fire, and she was finally extinguished. But it had been too much, too late. My ship, my city, had been damaged, and our fuel supply contaminated and rendered useless. We were forced to make an emergency landing. We selected this site because it is far from the native cities. We had no wish to disturb them. We landed intact, but our power has been draining slowly ever since. Nothing we have been able to do has helped at all. It will not be long before we must leave this craft forever. Sadly, our only choice is to try and take this world from the human race. To this end, I posted the Guardian robots to watch the approach. If we had the power, we have enough of them in storage to conquer this planet alone. But we cannot use them with so little energy available to us. We will have to fight, using the primitive weapons of this day and our technological skills. What else can we do? He looked up at Ace in sorrow. It is a terrible dilemma that we find ourselves in. It's worse than you think, she told him grinfully. You didn't destroy this Kataka you told me about. She's alive and well and living in Kish as the goddess Ishtar. Utnapishtim almost fainted with the shock. You're lying, he finally insisted wildly. No, I'm not. She's there, taking over new slaves and getting ready to take over a new world. Face it, mate, pretty soon it'll be academic whether you or the human race gets control of the Earth. If she's left unchecked, she'll control everything. After a long silence, the colour returned to Utnapishtim's cheeks. Ace urged him to take more of the fruit juice, but he declined. I'm as well as I can be, he assured her, after such terrible news. Well, she challenged him, what are you going to do about it? Do? He echoed bleakly. What can I do? He gestured about him. When my ship was at full strength, we barely managed to stop her. Now, we would be lucky to even make her notice us. There is nothing that we can do to stop her now. No! Ace insisted angrily. You can't just give up. She's still weak. Casting about for ideas, she grabbed his tunic. Those guardian robots of yours, why not send them after her? They'd be able to dissect her in seconds, right? He shook his head. Ace, it's not possible. She'd be able to override their circuitry and turn them on us if she knew they were here. I dare not send them to her. And we cannot take this ship so far. Our energy levels are far too low for that. Besides, even if we could get to this kiss you speak of, then what could we do? Throw rocks at her? Or talk her to death? That computer virus, Ace said, grinning. She felt inspired. You said that it might have defeated her if you had a chance to work on it. But Nappish Tim hesitated a moment and then shook his head once more. No, Ace, I can't do it. Even if I could somehow rework the virus, I have to get it into her system. That would need doing face to face because she's bound to have some protection against any such interference again. Then get off your backside and start working, Ace yelled. You can't just give up. Not with the fate of my species in your hands. I won't let you. This is my world she's threatening now, and my future. I won't let her destroy it just because you've lost the courage to fight for what you believe in. With a sigh and a shrug, Nappish Tim clambered to his feet slowly. Very well, he agreed. I'll look into that computer virus. But even assuming I can come up with one that will do what we want, how do we get it to Kataka? I'll figure something out, promised Ace. You get the weapon we can use, and I'll make certain Ishtar gets it right where it will hurt her the most. Grimly she closed her eyes and knotted her fists. For the sake of the human race, she couldn't afford to mess this one up. She could only pray that the doctor would have some idea what they could do with the virus.